Most people assume the biggest gamble with a dirt-cheap solar panel is getting less power than the advertisement promises. The real danger costs far more than that, because it begins the moment you trust a number that could never exist in the real world. Countless ultra-budget listings rely on the same trick, replacing honest engineering with marketing designed to turn impossible claims into impulse purchases. Once that illusion takes hold, the damage reaches well beyond the money you spent. You lose time, confidence, dependable power when you actually need it, and eventually discover that the incredible bargain never had any chance of delivering what the listing suggested. Forget asking whether TEMU solar panels are good or bad, because that question misses the point entirely. The real skill is learning how to separate genuine factory direct value from listings that fall apart, the second you compare them with basic physics. Once you understand how experienced buyers judge these products, those unbelievable wattage claims stop looking exciting and start looking suspicious. Everything starts with one misconception that needs to disappear immediately. A surprising number of shoppers speak about TEMU as though it builds solar panels itself, when that has never been the case. TEMU is an online marketplace launched in September 2022 under PDD Holdings, connecting buyers with thousands of independent sellers, and that single fact changes the entire conversation. Whenever someone says, "TEMU solar panels are terrible," they're usually treating thousands of unrelated merchants as if they all came from one factory, which simply isn't how the platform operates. Some sellers offer products that work perfectly well for light-duty applications, while others exaggerate specifications, provide weak documentation, or disappear when support is needed. Knowing that difference already puts you ahead of most shoppers. Experienced buyers never judge the marketplace first, they judge the individual listing, because marketplaces don't manufacture quality. Manufacturers do. That mindset immediately leads to the first warning sign. Seasoned solar buyers notice almost without thinking, and surprisingly, it isn't the price. It's the numbers. Spend only a few minutes browsing inexpensive solar listings and the pattern begins to appear almost everywhere. Foldable panels advertised at 600 watts. Portable panels claiming 1000 watts. Tiny products promising 2000 watts. Those numbers sound exciting because bigger figures naturally feel like better performance, which is exactly why they work so well as marketing. The hidden catch is that solar panels don't respond to marketing, they respond to physics. Modern solar panels produce roughly 200 to 230 watts per square meter under ideal laboratory conditions, which means a genuine 600-watt panel needs roughly 3 square meters of premium photovoltaic cells before it can honestly make that claim. Now compare that requirement with many compact folding panels advertising similar output, and that is exactly when the math breaks down. The surface area simply isn't large enough. No explanation can change the physical limits of the panel itself. That doesn't automatically prove anyone acted with malicious intent. Some sellers could be referencing theoretical output, combined values, or other interpretations instead of continuous rated power, yet none of those explanations matter to someone trying to generate electricity in the real world. Only actual output matters. That's where experienced solar buyers separate themselves from beginners. Casual shoppers compare the advertised wattage. Experienced buyers compare the physical dimensions first, because changing a product title is easy, while changing the laws of physics is impossible. Once you begin looking at listings through that lens, another pattern becomes impossible to ignore. If the specifications deserve careful scrutiny, everything surrounding the product deserves the same treatment. Build quality quickly becomes part of the conversation. One of the most common complaints surrounding ultra-budget solar products isn't total failure. The real problem is inconsistency, because buyers frequently report thin aluminum frames, poor lamination, weak hinges on folding designs, low-quality connectors, and inconsistent waterproofing. Notice what all those complaints have in common. None of them appear on every single product. That's exactly why these listings can be so difficult to evaluate, because two panels with nearly identical advertised specifications can produce completely different ownership experiences. Buying purely on price introduces something many people never calculate: uncertainty. Premium manufacturers invest heavily in manufacturing controls because long-term performance depends on much more than the photovoltaic cells alone. Frame construction matters, lamination quality matters, connector reliability matters, and small manufacturing differences often become expensive problems after months or years of weather exposure and repeated use. None of that means every inexpensive product is defective. It simply means uncertainty becomes part of what you're buying, and uncertainty is almost impossible to measure before you press the Buy Now button. Another detail experienced buyers rarely ignore is efficiency. Many premium manufacturers openly advertise module efficiencies above 20%, while numerous ultra-budget listings leave efficiency completely out, publish figures that are difficult to verify, or provide no independent certification supporting those numbers. Missing information doesn't automatically prove poor performance. It does remove one of your strongest tools for making an informed comparison. Once verified specifications disappear, marketing language naturally becomes louder, and that's exactly where deceptive listings perform best. Uncertainty creates opportunity, not for buyers, for anyone selling a dream instead of measurable performance. If vague specifications make performance difficult to judge, the next question becomes even more important. Who actually verified those claims? That is where the conversation shifts from convenience to risk. Whenever a solar panel is intended for residential installation, recognized certifications are much more than paperwork. They show that the product has been evaluated against established standards instead of relying entirely on marketing claims. Depending on where you live, buyers commonly look for certifications such as UL in the United States or CE marking and IEC standards throughout Europe. One recurring concern with some ultra-budget marketplace listings is the absence of those recognized certifications or documentation that buyers simply cannot verify on their own. That doesn't automatically make a product unsafe. It does mean you're making a decision with far less information than you probably realize. Think about the amount of research people do before buying a smartphone or a laptop, because they'll compare processors, battery life, display quality, and dozens of technical details before spending their money. Now compare that with a device designed to generate electricity. Strangely enough, many shoppers become less skeptical as the price gets lower and the bargain itself becomes the distraction. Experienced buyers work in the opposite direction. The cheaper the product becomes, the more carefully they inspect every piece of documentation, because technical products often reveal more through what's missing than through what's advertised. Support is another area where the real cost of an ultra-cheap purchase begins to appear. That difference usually isn't visible on the product page. You only discover it after something goes wrong. Established premium manufacturers commonly back their products with warranties ranging from 10 to 25 years, while power output warranties often extend 25 to 30 years. Many inexpensive marketplace listings offer much shorter warranty periods, seller-only guarantees, or return processes that become far more complicated once international shipping is involved. Of course, that varies from seller to seller. Some merchants provide excellent customer service. Others disappear completely. That's one of the realities of buying through a marketplace made up of thousands of independent businesses, because you're never evaluating only the product. You're also evaluating the long-term reliability of the company standing behind it. Experienced buyers understand that calculation instinctively. The cheapest purchase isn't the one with the smallest price tag. It's the one that keeps working without creating expensive problems later. While individual sellers deserve careful evaluation, the marketplace itself has also attracted increasing international attention, not because of solar panels specifically, but because of a much larger issue. How much responsibility should an online marketplace carry for the products sold through its platform? That debate intensified in October 2024 when the European Commission opened a formal investigation into TEMU under the Digital Services Act. The investigation extended well beyond renewable energy products, examining broader concerns involving illegal products, unsafe products, recommendation systems, and consumer protection obligations. The story continued on July 28, 2025, when the European Commission announced preliminary findings stating that TEMU had failed to adequately assess the risks of illegal products appearing on its marketplace. According to the Commission, mystery shopping exercises suggested consumers were very likely to encounter non-compliant products. The examples cited included electronics and baby toys, not solar panels. That distinction matters because headlines often become much more dramatic than the facts behind them. The investigation was never presented as proof that every product on the platform was unsafe. Instead, regulators questioned whether the marketplace's systems were doing enough to prevent problematic listings from reaching consumers in the first place. Those are two completely different claims. Unfortunately, that kind of nuance usually disappears once social media gets involved. Another major development arrived in May 2026. The European Commission announced a €200 million fine against TEMU under the Digital Services Act, stating that the company had failed to properly identify and mitigate risks associated with illegal products sold through its marketplace. Once again, the examples centered on unsafe chargers and hazardous toys, not solar panels. The significance wasn't that solar products had been singled out. The real takeaway was that regulators viewed marketplace oversight itself as a systemic issue. That's the lesson many consumers overlook. Sometimes the biggest warning sign isn't one specific product. It's the environment where that product is being sold. TEMU has disputed many of those regulatory allegations, stating that the company cooperates with regulators, removes unsafe listings, improves seller monitoring, and continues strengthening its risk assessment systems. Meanwhile, PDD Holdings has acknowledged in its SEC filings that defective products sold by third-party merchants across its platforms could expose the company to lawsuits and regulatory action. Notice how much more balanced that picture becomes once you look beyond the headlines. The story isn't that everything is fake. It also isn't that everything can be trusted. Reality sits somewhere in between. And that's exactly where informed buyers gain their biggest advantage. They aren't shopping emotionally. They're filtering noise. They're separating the reputation of the marketplace from the credibility of the individual seller. They're separating impossible promises from realistic engineering. Most importantly, they refuse to let an unbelievably low price replace critical thinking. The most interesting part of this entire story isn't actually about TEMU. It's about us. Human beings are naturally attracted to asymmetrical upside. Give someone even a small chance that a $30 purchase could perform like a product costing several times more, and the brain immediately starts negotiating with reality. Maybe this one is different. Maybe everyone else is paying too much. Maybe I just found the hidden bargain. That's exactly why impossible specifications keep selling. They don't have to convince everyone. They only have to convince enough people that the potential reward feels bigger than the perceived risk. Experienced buyers recognize that psychological trap almost instantly. They know genuine factory direct pricing exists. Manufacturing efficiencies are real. Lower marketing costs are real. Reduced overhead is real. None of those advantages rewrite the laws of physics. A product can absolutely be inexpensive. It cannot be physically impossible. That distinction changes everything. Another detail many shoppers overlook is that plenty of well-known solar brands don't manufacture every component themselves. OEM manufacturing is common throughout the industry, which means an unfamiliar name doesn't automatically indicate poor quality, just as a famous logo doesn't automatically guarantee exceptional construction. Real quality depends on cell grade, lamination quality, manufacturing consistency, testing and certification, not simply the name printed on the frame. That's why experienced buyers rarely ask whether a marketplace is good or bad. They ask far better questions. Does the physical size support the advertised output? Is there recognizable certification? Can the documentation be independently verified? Does the seller offer meaningful warranty support? Are the specifications complete? Or are important details conveniently missing? Those questions don't eliminate every risk. They reduce it dramatically. There's another reason this conversation matters beyond a single purchase. The entire global marketplace is changing. Low-cost, international e-commerce has expanded at an extraordinary pace, and according to the European Commission, around 91% of low-value e-commerce shipments entering the European Union originated from China, representing roughly 4.6 billion low-value shipments during the referenced period. Those numbers help explain why regulators have become increasingly focused on marketplace oversight. When billions of products cross international borders, identifying non-compliant listings stops being an isolated problem and becomes a challenge of sheer scale. That doesn't mean consumers should automatically avoid every inexpensive product. It means buyers can no longer outsource skepticism. Years ago, many people assumed that if a product reached the market, someone else had already verified everything that mattered. Modern online marketplaces place far more responsibility on the individual consumer. That shift rewards knowledge instead of impulse. It rewards understanding engineering instead of advertising. It rewards documentation instead of assumptions. It rewards evidence instead of excitement. Perhaps the most revealing statement came from European Commission Executive Vice President Henna Virkkunen, who said, "Consumer safety online is not negotiable in the EU." Whether you agree with every regulatory decision or not, that quote captures the direction this conversation is heading. Marketplaces are facing growing expectations to identify problematic listings before consumers ever see them. Until those systems become perfect, and no marketplace has achieved that yet, the final layer of protection is still the buyer. Nobody needs to become an engineer overnight. Asking a handful of disciplined questions is often enough to expose claims that never deserved trust in the first place. The irony is that affordable solar technology isn't the enemy. Lower prices can make renewable energy accessible to more people. Competition can benefit consumers. Factory direct business models can create legitimate value. The real enemy is the marketing strategy that depends on buyers confusing extraordinary claims with extraordinary deals. Those are not the same thing. The next time you come across a tiny foldable panel promising astonishing wattage for an unbelievably low price, ignore the discount for a moment. Look at the dimensions. Look for recognized certification. Ask whether the specifications respect the limits of physics before they promise to rewrite them. Because when it comes to solar power, the cheapest mistake usually isn't buying an inexpensive panel. It's paying for a promise that reality could never deliver.